In this lecture for commercial law for business students for Isra University, we are going to study liability despite exercise of all due care, which on page 123. Strict liability applies even though the seller has exercised all possible care in the preparation and sale of his product. This is the crux of strict liability and distinguishes it from the conventional theory of negligence. It does not matter how reasonably the seller acted, how exemplary is a manufacturer's quality control system. What matters is whether the product was defective from the factory and the user injured as a result of this defection. Suppose an automated bottle factory manufactures 1,000 bottles per hour under exacting standards with a rigorous and costly quality control program designed to weed out any bottles showing even an infinitesimal amount of stress. The plant is state of the art, very modern, and its computerized quality control operation is the best in the world. It regularly detects the one out of every 10,000 bottles that an analysis has shown will be defective. Despite this intense effort, it proves impossible to weed out every defective bottle. 1 out of 1 million, say, will still escape detection. Assume that a bottle filled with soda finds its way into a consumer's home, explodes when handled, sends glass shred into his eyes and blinds him. Under negligence, the butler has no liability. Under strict liability, the butler will be liable to the consumer in this case. Liability without contractual relations. So, without contractual relations, it refers to that there is no contract between the two of them. Strict liability applies even though the user has not purchased the product from the seller, nor has the user entered into contractual relations with the seller. In short, privity is abolished and the injured user may use the theory of strict liability against manufacturers and wholesalers as well as retailers. Here, however, the courts have varied in their approaches. The trend has been to allow bystanders recovery. The restatement explicitly leaves open the question of the bystander's right to recover under strict liability. Now we are moving to chapter number 6, commercial papers. It's very important actually. Commercial papers. It starts on page 127. Introduction. The importance of commercial papers. We are going to study the commercial papers, but we have to define, actually in the introduction, define the commercial papers. The importance of commercial papers, because commercial papers is a vital invitation for the working of our economic system. Brief attention to its history and its function as a medium of exchange in economics and finance is appropriate. The general rule of or the general role of commercial paper. Commercial paper is the collective term for various financial instruments or tools that include checks drawn on commercial banks, drafts drawn on something other than a bank, certificates of deposit, and notes evidencing a promise to pay. Like money, commercial paper is a medium of exchange, but because it is one step removed from money, difficulties arise that requires a series of interlocking rules to protect both sellers and buyers. History of commercial paper. Negotiable instruments are not modern invention. We know that merchants used them as long ago as the age of Hammurabi, around 1700 BC, before Christ. They fell into the disuse after the collapse of the Roman Empire, and then reappeared in Italy around the 14th century. They became more common as long-distance commerce spread in an area before paper currency payment in coins or bullion was awkward. Especially for merchants to travel great distances across national boundaries to attend the fairs at which most economic exchange took place. Merchants and tenders found it far more efficient to pay with paper. Bill of exchange, today commonly known as drafts. Bill of exchange, today commonly known as drafts. So they are drafts, were recognized instruments in the law merchant. The law merchant was the system of rules and customs recognized and adopted by early modern traders. A draft is an unconditional order, there is no condition, by one person, the drawer, directing another person, drawee or payer, to pay money to a named third person or to bearer. A check is the most familiar type of draft. The international merchant courts regularly enforced drafts and permitted them to be transferred to others by endorsement, the legal spelling of endorsement. By the beginning of the 16th century, the British common law courts began to hear cases involving bill of exchange, means drafts, but it took a half century before the courts became comfortable with them and accepted them as crucial to the growing economy. Courts were also hesitant until the end of the 17th century about sanctioning a transferor's assignment of a promissory note if it meant that the transferee would have better title than the transferor. One reason for the court's reluctance to sanction assignments stemmed from the law that permitted debaters to be jailed a law that was not repealed until 1870. The buyer of goods might have been willing originally to give a promissory note because he knew that a particular seller would be attempt to jail him for default, but who could be sure that a transferee, probably a complete stranger, would be so charitable.